Guys, this is Dr. Mobeen from drbeen.com. Today we are continuing our discussion with the thiamine. Today we will look at some of the studies that have used thiamine in septic shock, and we'll see that what does thiamine do over there and what is the result of those studies. One thing that I wanted to clarify from yesterday, somebody had left a comment in the live chat and I cannot respond in the live chat, but the comment was that aren't we getting too many of these supplements that we need to keep track of? So please realize that the thiamine is actually in ICU usage. We should all keep thiamine up to speed. We should have the right levels of the thiamine, but thiamine usually in our fortified foods or in our food products that we eat usually is present in sufficient quantities that we do not need to take it from outside. But there are times when people can become thiamine deficient, and we discussed that yesterday. This particular usage of thiamine in COVID-19 is really in the septic shock stage or in the ICU management of the patient. So it is not that we're just piling on more and more supplements. I am just going through all the Math Plus protocol, or rather Math Plus Plus protocol drugs that we had not covered. So with this, good morning, everyone, and let's start. The thing that I wanted to also share, a couple of things that are interesting. One, I was lamenting yesterday that YouTube keeps throwing away our videos. And so yesterday they reinstated one of the videos. Then there were folks on Twitter who had been upset and they'd been talking about YouTube and they were talking with others. And the result was that YouTube, I think when the people pushed back, YouTube actually, their team connected with me on Twitter today and said that let's look at your videos and see what's going on. So hopefully they would reinstate the other other videos as well. So with this, so that's a good news. Let us start our discussion. Today is the studies day. With that, there is a couple of news. There are a couple of news as well that are interesting. One is that today there was a news in BBC and others that there is a dexamethasone has reduced the mortality in ICUs by 1/3. So we would discuss dexamethasone tomorrow. We have discussed these steroids before in Math Plus protocol, but I think it's interesting to look at them as a separate topic as well. So we'll look at that tomorrow. Let's continue to look at our Math Plus protocol. The only thing left in the Math Plus protocol is now this study for thiamine and then iodine, and then we are done. So my request to everyone who's looking at these supplements is to look at the Math Plus protocol and see where do these supplements fit. Some of those are at home management. Some of those are for the inpatient management or mild cases, and then some are for moderate, severe, and ICU cases. So not everything has to be taken right away. So with this, let's start. So the first good news, another good news, we are live on BitChute. Although BitChute is a little clunky, but I was able to upload one of the videos here. The video that I did yesterday is here. So I thought that we will start working with these videos from now on, and then we will go back and upload the previous videos as well. So today's video will be up here as well by tomorrow. Yes, so I'm looking at a comment from Kurt that CDC and FDA took away the emergency use of hydrochloroquine. So I do not know what is going on with these folks. What are the studies they're looking at? What are the results they're looking at? If they're looking at the hydroxychloroquine, what study can they be looking at? I have to look at what they're doing. I have just become so agnostic to them nowadays that they don't seem to have their path right. And I was talking with someone today and they said, well, nobody has a path right. So how do we know who's right and who's wrong? And I said the simplest answer are two. One is look at the data. And second is make sure that you are always looking at a person's life and not the politics. So if we look at the data would tell us maybe we are all wrong about hydroxychloroquine, or maybe the people who are saying it doesn't work, they are wrong. Once we look at the data, we'll know more. And secondly, as long as we keep our compasses correct, and our compass is saving a human being, doesn't matter who that human being is, but saving a human being, as long as we are thinking that way, at least in the medical community, then we are on the right track. Then we'll find the right solutions. So with this, let's start. So I want to discuss the studies that we have. These are called HAT studies. So HAT is, it stands for hydrocortisone, ascorbic acid, and thiamine. Ascorbic acid being the vitamin C and thiamine being the vitamin B1 that we discussed yesterday. I will link the previous videos here as well, so you can look at thiamine video yesterday. This is the video that I was just showing here on the bit shoot as well. So two studies that are interesting, and I wanted to discuss them with you. First study is a study done in 2020. In this study, they had administered HAT therapy. Again, this is patients of septic shock. This is patients who are in ICU. This is not a study on COVID-19, but we know that the patients who are in the ICU and are COVID-19 patients, they end up eventually towards septic shock. So when the septic shock occurs, at that time, the pathogen itself is irrelevant. The virus itself is irrelevant. It is the immune system that has taken over and is burning through the body by aggressive response. So we have to then once the septic shock or ARDS is there, ARDS is a separate step, but then it leads to septic shock. Once we are in that kind of a stage, then the management is similar. It doesn't matter what pathogen caused it. So here they took these folks, two groups of people. One were 68 that were receiving HAT treatment. The other one 69, they were the control. They were not receiving this treatment. And the study found that the requirement for vasopressors, when somebody is in a septic shock, we have discussed this in the video that is entitled "Why SARS-CoV-2 Kills So Fast or So Rapidly." That is one of the videos on YouTube that in my channel. Over there, we have looked at the mechanism of septic shock, that how does it occur. Over here, what we can just recall is that in the septic shock, blood vessels have dilated, the blood volume has reduced, blood pressure is reduced, and patients' organs are being damaged because there is not enough blood volume and blood flow and blood pressure, which is bringing nutrition and oxygen to the tissues. And so the tissues would start getting damaged. And the most important tissues that get damaged early on are the tissues that require more energy. For example, kidney failure or heart failure or lung damage already occurring, and then the brain damage. So here they took these folks in the ICU. The vasopressors are given to constrict the blood vessels. So what happens is, let's say this is a blood vessel. If the diameter of the blood vessel increases, that causes severe blood pressure drop. Blood pressure drops. And when the blood pressure drops, then the nutrition supply to the tissue drops as well, because inside the blood vessels, the pressure acts as a force that pushes the nutrients out of the capillaries towards the tissue. So when the pressure drops, then imagine if this was a capillary, and capillaries have gaps in their cells through which the nutrition can come out and waste products can go back. So what happens is, as the blood pressure drops, the force here that is moving the nutrients out, that force reduces. So even when we have the blood present in the blood vessels, it is not squeezed enough to give the nutrition to the tissue, which then causes the organ damage. So what we do is that we give vasopressors. Vasopressors are drugs that would reduce the the diameter of the blood vessels back towards normal. We try to make them normal. That creates enough pressure again, which would cause the nutrients to ooze out, or I shouldn't say ooze out, squeeze out and go to the tissues. So what they had done was, they observed that the people who were on the HAT therapy, they required vasopressors for their septic shock only for 27 hours plus minus 22. I would consider that from 1 to 2 days. Compared to the control group that were not receiving the HAT therapy, they received vasopressors, or they stayed in the state of shock for 53 hours plus minus 38 hours, so 3 or 4 days. So it almost cut down the requirement of a patient to stay in the ICU and to be on the vasopressors for a long time. Now, it's almost like maybe double or 50% of the time now. And so you might say that let me look at the rest of the parameters here as well, and then I'll talk about the comment I was going to make. The other thing that happened was there was no significant change in SOFA score. SOFA scores are the scores that we use in ICU to monitor a person's state. So what we do is we look at their various organs and their function, and we score them. And if the SOFA score starts increasing, that means the patient is their organs are getting damaged. So, for example, here the respiratory system SOFA score, if the partial pressure of oxygen and FiO2, this fraction is greater than 400, then the SOFA score is 0, which is excellent. And if it drops below 100, then the SOFA score is 4, which is bad because now the patient is being on ventilation and still lungs are not working correctly. Another example here, nervous system. If the Glasgow Coma Scale, which is a coma scale to assess the patient that how deep is their coma, if the score is 15, which is the best score, then the SOFA score is 0. But if the score for the Glasgow Coma Scale, or the disability in the patient because of the nervous system damage or dysfunction, goes below 6, then the SOFA score goes to 4. So as you can see here, for various organs, if the organ is functioning correctly, the SOFA score is small. And if the organ is not functioning correctly, then the SOFA score is greater. So you can then see that if the SOFA score continues to go up, that would mean that the patient is deteriorating. So in this study, they saw that there was no change in SOFA score with HAT therapy. So it didn't really help the organ damage that was happening, but it did reduce the time the damage continued to occur. Then no significant difference in mortality, the time of stay, in the length of stay at hospital, or vent-free days. So not a striking difference, but still somebody staying on a vasopressor or staying in the state of shock for half the time as compared to the control is a significant change. The other thing is that these drugs are very cheap and they are available. So the vitamin C is available, it is cheap. Thiamine is available and it is cheap. And hydrocortisone is available and it is cheap as well. So because they are an easy remedy, they are used often in ICU for septic patients. And then, of course, we were talking about thiamine, so that works here. Second study, and I wanted to show the second study with this car example. So look, if it's a sports car, I try to make it look like sporty. So let's say if this is a car, the car has the tires that are functioning, it has an engine that is functioning, and then the car will have fuel that is necessary, correct? Imagine that thiamine is responsible. So the question is, why do we give all these three things together? And I'm going to answer that question before we move on to the study itself. Thiamine, imagine that is the fuel. Remember yesterday we discussed, so this is the fuel tank. Yesterday we discussed that thiamine is responsible for energy releasing mechanisms. It is a coenzyme in the energy releasing mechanism, for example, making ATP. And if the energy is not there, if the fuel is not there, let's say my heart, if it doesn't have enough fuel, but it still has to function, the result will be it would use anaerobic respiration and it will produce lactic acid, which would cause organ damage. So when we stress our body without ample fuel, then the damage would occur. So thiamine is going to act like a fuel in the car. So we want our immune system and our organs to have plenty of ATP produced so they can function correctly. So thiamine is for that. Then is the ascorbic acid, or the, what is that? The vitamin C. Ascorbic acid, imagine that is like four-wheel drive for the car. Remember we talked about it. So there is a video I had done that can vitamin C help COVID-19 patients. In that video, I went into a detail that ascorbic acid is a very potent antioxidant. And antioxidants what does it do, vitamin C? What it will do is it would neutralize the antioxidants, and it would help modulate the immune system with vitamin D. I would actually put vitamin D in this as well. But, anyways, it would help modulate the immune system to stay in balance. So, a four-wheel drive car, I believe, has all the tires in the right balance, and they work in sync with each other, and they keep the car going straight. That is the thing that we want for our immune system as well, that reactive oxygen species do not make the car hit the rail and have a crash. So vitamin C would act to continue to take away the reactive oxygen species that are produced and keep the immune system's function balanced. And then finally, steroids, hydrocortisone, that is like something that modulates the engine. So we do not want the immune system to run so fast to burn the car itself or to burn the engine. So imagine if the immune system is the engine that is running to do the fight. If the steroids are present, then they would keep a lid on that engine. They would keep the engine going only fast enough that it is working in the right way, instead of so fast that it causes the damage. So this is why I think you would agree that we need to have fuel, we need to have the proper balance of the immune system, and we want to make sure that antioxidants are not too many, and then we want to have the immune system itself behave in a right way instead of run away. So let's look at that study now. Yeah, so there is a comment with vitamin D, the acronym would be DHAT, lol. Correct. And I would definitely agree that without vitamin D, HAT score itself, I think that HAT's potency can improve if the vitamin D is present there as well. So let's look at this. This is a study. So the two studies that I just showed, here is the first study. This is the outcome of metabolic resuscitation using ascorbic acid, thiamine, and glucocorticoids in the early treatment of sepsis. And here is a quick comment before we look at the study. The difference between various steroids. For example, we've been talking about methylprednisolone in MATH plus protocol. Today we heard about dexamethasone to be useful. So the difference between them, they're all steroids. The difference is that hydrocortisone and cortisone, they are short acting and they are less potent. Then prednisone and methylprednisolone are intermediate potent. They are about 5 times stronger than cortisones. And then the dexamethasone is about 25 times more potent than the short acting. So it is really their potency, how strong they are. So back here, they've used glucocorticoids or steroids. And here they're saying that we observed the sequential organ failure assessment, that is the SOFA score. And this is what I just discussed. A statistically significant difference was found in the time patient required vasopressors, indicating quicker reversal of shock in the HAT group. And their conclusion was, which I really loved, their conclusion was over here. They said HAT therapy is safe and decreases the duration of shock in patients with sepsis. So number one, it is safe. So there is not much after side effects that we should say don't use it. It is safe, and then it reduces the duration. Here they're talking about the thiamine. Thiamine may reduce the risk of hyperoxalosis because of its function as a cofactor in the oxidation of glyoxylate by the enzyme glyoxylate aminotransferase. We talked about those aminotransferases yesterday with the ketolases. Additionally, correction of thiamine deficiency may help mitigate oxidative stress and inflammation, as shown in animal models. Thiamine deficiency has been shown to occur in 10 to 70% of the patients who are in sepsis. So that not only antioxidant, but also keeping all the organs supplied with the correct amount of ATP is very important. When we are under stress and when we are burning through energy because we are fighting the virus and the inflammation, we are going to be depleted on ATP. And if we cannot make more ATP quickly because thiamine is less, then we are in trouble. So this is one study. Second study is this one. And this is 2018. Again, this is not a COVID-19 study, it is sepsis study. Hydrocortisone, ascorbic acid, and thiamine for the treatment of sepsis, focus on ascorbic acid. So their focus was to look at ascorbic acid. So if you see here, preliminary data suggests that the combination of hydrocortisone, ascorbic acid, and thiamine may reduce organ failure and mortality in patients with sepsis and septic shock. Readily available. So why do they use these three products? Readily available, safe, cheap, with target multiple components of the host immune response. So this is the basic study here. Actually, they went over many studies, but I want to recall with you how the immune system becomes damaging. Remember that when the inflammation is started, we have reactive oxygen species that are produced. Those reactive oxygen species can be good and bad. They are good when we are killing the pathogen. And we have done that discussion. I'll just very quickly draw that over here. What happens is that, let's say this is a macrophage or a neutrophil or a dendritic cell. In there, let's say there is a coronavirus. Normally what they do is they put that virus in sort of a hot tub in a lysosomal, we call it lysosome. And what happens is, first the virus comes in. When the virus is brought in, we call it a phagosome because we just ate it up. So then we fuse it with other vesicles inside the cell that are filled with products, bleach, if you can. I hope that I'm not breaking up. So they are filled with bleach, for example. So what we do is we fuse the phagosome and lysosome together, and this fused component here, in here we'll make bleach. So we'll make reactive oxygen species here. Those reactive oxygen species would attack this pathogen and they would break it up, and that is how we kill the pathogen. Plus, that is how our cells present the pathogen's parts outside for the rest of the immune system, or the antigen presentation. So this is one area where reactive oxygen species is actually very useful. Similarly, we had also seen that in the electron transport chain, we are actually moving electrons from one component to the other. So of course, when we are moving the electrons from there and then finally we combine it with oxygen, in this process, reactive oxygen species are produced. We are actually moving, we are doing redox operations. So reactive oxygen species are useful as well for us. However, when they become runaway, when they come out and they become monsters and they start welding our cells, the cell membranes, and when they start damaging our lipids, when they start damaging our DNA and RNA, that is when the cell gets in trouble. So ascorbic acid is going to be helping with that. So back here, if you see, these are the reactive oxygen species. And then look at this damage to the lipids and proteins, uncoupling of the eNOS, the nitric oxide products that we talked in one of our discussions. And then if you see, there is more iNOS that are increased, ATP is reduced over here, cell gets in trouble. And then if we have vitamin C and thiamine, then we start supporting this system. So this is a very interesting study that I thought was important. When the host's antioxidant defenses are overwhelmed, ROS can induce injury to lipids. So keep this in mind, lipids. Remember we talked about lipid peroxidation and the reactive lipid species that are found with the reactive oxygen species in one of our previous discussions. So lipids are destroyed or damaged, proteins are damaged, nucleic acids are damaged. All of those end up causing severe endothelial dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular injury, organ dysfunction. So HAT therapy helps reduce this damage time to almost half. So this is the study. This is vitamin C they're talking about. And what they have done is, in this study, and I put the links out, they have referenced other studies that were useful in their study. And finally, here you would see thiamine. This is the hydrocortisone. We'll talk about steroids a little more tomorrow. And this is thiamine. So thiamine is a precursor of thiamine pyrophosphate, the thing that we talked yesterday, the essential coenzyme of several decarboxylases required for glucose metabolism, Krebs cycle, generation of ATP, pentose phosphate pathway. We talked about that yesterday, production of NADPH. All of those are really important to keep the immune system going, to keep our immune system in balance, and to make the body is fighting. So Puru is asking that what is the duration of the HAT therapy? I think the HAT therapy's duration it depends upon the outcome. Their outcome for the HAT therapy studies was that either patient is discharged, or the patient's SOFA score reduces, or patient comes off of the ventilation. So it really is dependent upon how you see the improvement of a septic patient. For me, the septic patient's improvement will be that they don't need vasopressors anymore. They're off of the ventilator. Best is that they're discharged and they're gone home. So that is great. Then Mark is talking about the good news with the dexamethasone, of course. So that is a study that came in today. So we are kind of primed to understand that. In the Math Plus ICU management, I've discussed steroids. Tomorrow we'll focus on dexamethasone and see how does that work. Where does arginine fit into all this? So let's talk about that, Patrick, tomorrow. Is the bleach to kill the pathogen actually H2O2, hydrogen peroxide? Yes, that is correct. Luffy is late for the lecture again. Yes, Luffy had to go to a doctor today. He was anxious, so doctor gave him anti-anxiety. So maybe he's anxious. He's looking at me being home all the time. So with Caroline, with vitamin D, the acronym, correct that. What are the plasma levels peaking at what interval is being administered? So little fun, if you can go over the studies as well, you can see that they give a method of the study in which they talk about what did they do. Hello everyone, and we will now, ACQ won't even be indicated in later stage of the absolutely. So this is what my last comment, and then we are good for today, and we'll continue our discussion tomorrow with dexamethasone, and then we'll do iodine after that. The supplements and the drugs that we have been discussing, they are useful at various stages of the disease itself. So there are times when a patient is at home, there is a different set of those supplements. And if you wanted to see what are those, look at the Math Plus protocol. I am trying to create another document where I would take the Math Plus protocol and add those that extra plus for those things that they either made optional or missed. And I think that those are important things to add. So I would create a little modification to Math Plus as well. So this is the discussion for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to make sure that we look at the studies as well that have looked at thiamine. Although the study's focus has been ascorbic acid, but they are not running without thiamine, because thiamine provides the antioxidant, plus it provides anti-inflammation, plus it provides the ATP. Very good. Interested to know how the best found by are used. So we'll talk about that then, James Kelly, tomorrow as well. And with this, any other question before we break? Let me just quickly check with IL-6. How do steroids interact with IL-6 inhibitors? So we'll talk, Siddhartha, I have done that discussion once before as well. The steroids can reduce the immune system by acting almost at all cells of the immune system. That is one. Secondly, as we know that steroids work on the the arachidonic acid production. So they work on the enzyme that is helping produce arachidonic acid from phospholipids. And I believe these are phospholipases or phospholipase A2. And they suppress that. That causes the whole cyclooxygenase and lipoxygenase related, the prostaglandin, prostacyclin, leukotriene production, all of them go down. So inflammation goes down, immune system becomes more tuned, and that is how steroids help. So James Kelly, hat is a wonderful combo. Absolutely. Very fascinating. Super presentation. Thank you very much, James. And thank you guys. And thank you very much for your support as well. It seems like our videos might actually come back. So we will go from there. Tomorrow we'll continue. Tomorrow we'll talk about dexamethasone, and then day after we'll talk about iodine. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Stay safe and healthy. Love you all. Bye bye.